Good afternoon, folks. Before we begin today, there's a couple of points I want to make. The jury is assembled and prepared to come in. They have indicated that they have reached their verdicts in this matter. First of all, I want to make sure that the media is aware and reminded, do not photograph, record, stream, or in any way capture images of the jury. They do not want to be photographed, and I'm ordering that no video of the jurors be taken. Secondly, the verdict forms are long and complex. There's about 70 verdict forms that I have to go through. And I have to review them to make sure that they are properly filled out, properly signed, and that they are consistent, which means it's going to take me a few minutes to go through these. So I'm not doing that to drag this out or in any way to delay things, but it's going to take me a few minutes to get through those verdict forms. So understand that that's what I'm doing while I'm reviewing them. And the last thing, and perhaps most importantly, is I am ordering that there be decorum in this courtroom, and that everybody, regardless of their feelings or affiliation, maintain their composure. This case is obviously been difficult for a lot of people. It's been stressful, and I understand emotions have been and are running high, and certainly that's understandable, but I expect that everybody in this courtroom to comport themselves properly. And in the event there is any kind of disruptions of any nature by anyone, that person or people will be removed and potentially face contempt charges. I guarantee you there will be a strong number of law enforcement and deputies in here to maintain decorum in this courtroom. So with that said, before I bring in the jury, Prosecutor Silva, Prosecutor DeZord, anything you want to add?
No, Your Honor.
Attorney Yoder?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Very well, bring in the jury. Please be seated.
So I'd like to remind everybody about cell phones. Make sure they're off or silent.
Good afternoon, members of the jury. It has been brought to my attention that after the last day and a half of deliberations that you have reached a verdict. Is that correct? And have you selected a foreperson? All right, you have verdict forms with you? And they've been filled out by you and by all the jurors?
Yes, Your Honor.
Would you give those to Ms. Pena, please? jury has properly filled out all of the jury verdict forms, interrogatories, and specifications. And I will, so I don't have to repeat this every single time, I will tell you that each of the verdict forms is properly filled out in ink dated today or yesterday. And actually, that is an issue. Can I see the lawyers real quick? Members of the jury, your verdict forms are properly filled out. There's no problems with your forms. But I note that all of the jury verdict forms are dated March 7th, 2019, which is yesterday. It's possible you filled the dates out. It's possible that you thought today was the 7th. Madam Foreman, let me ask you this question. Are these your jury verdicts for today, even though they're dated yesterday? I'm gonna ask the jurors each, before I go on, I'm going to consider you juror number 1 and ask you, ma'am, juror number 2, are these your verdicts as of today?
Yes.
Juror number 3?
Yes.
Juror number 4? Juror number 5?
Yes.
Juror number 6?
Yes.
Juror number 7?
Yes.
Juror number 8?
Yes.
Juror number 9?
Yes.
Juror number 10?
Yes.
Juror number 11?
Yes.
And juror number 12?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. The first jury verdict form, State of Ohio versus Martin Robinson, 18-0099-209. Verdict, count 1. Attempted aggravated murder, a felony of the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant, Martin Robinson, guilty of attempted aggravated murder as charged in count 1 of the indictment. It is signed in ink by all jurors, and again, I'm not going to repeat that every time, but all jury verdict forms are properly signed in ink by all jurors. Specification, count 1. We, the jury, find the defendant, Martin Robinson, guilty of firearm specification 1 attached to count 1. Count 1 specification 2. We, the jury, find the defendant, Martin Robinson, guilty of firearm specification 2 attached to count 1. Verdict, count 2, attempted murder, a felony of the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant, Martin Robinson, guilty of attempted murder as charged in count 2 of the indictment. Count 2 specification 1. We, the jury, find the defendant, Martin Robinson, guilty of firearm specification 1 attached to count 2. Count 2 specification. We, the jury, find the defendant, Martin Robinson, guilty of firearm specification 2 attached to count 2. Verdict, count 3, felonious assault, felony of the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant, Martin Robinson, guilty of felonious assault as charged in count 3 of the indictment. Mr. Robinson, you need to stay present while I finish these forms. I'm going to ask you, please, sir, to sit down. If there's any problems, I'll have you removed, but I would really appreciate and ask you to stay so that you hear the verdict forms.
I've heard enough.
Mr. Robinson, you really do have a right to be here, and you need to be here to hear the results of the jury's verdicts. You have a right to be part of your trial, sir. You really need to stay here, sir. There's no reason for you to leave.
Judge?
Yes.
I'm going to ask that you allow Mr. Robinson to be excused.
Prosecutors?
Continue on.
If he chooses to and he's waiving his presence.
Your attorney, okay, so the record should reflect that Mr. Robinson has risen from the trial table and has worked his way to the courtroom door. He is asked on the record to be excused. His attorney has asked me to excuse his presence. I will grant that request. Mr. Robinson can be escorted out of the courtroom at this time. I assume Mr. Yoder is still among us?
I'm here, Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Yoder. Count 3, Verdict, felonious assault, felony of the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of felonious assault as charged in count 3 of the indictment. Count 3, interrogatory felonious assault. We, the jury, do find that the victim, Eugene Potasic, was a peace officer. Count 3, specification 1. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 1 attached to count 3. Count 3, specification 2. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 2 attached to count 3. Verdict, count 4, felonious assault, felony of the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of felonious assault as charged in count 4 of the indictment. Count 4, felonious assault. We, the jury, do find that the victim, felony of the first degree. We, the jury, do find that the victim, Eugene Potasic, was a peace officer. Count 4, specification 1. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 1 attached to count 4. Count 4, specification 2. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 2 attached to count 4. Verdict, count 5, attempted murder. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of attempted murder as charged in count 5 of the indictment. We, count 5, specification 1. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 1 attached to count 5. Count 5, specification 2. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 2 attached to count 5. Verdict, count 6, felonious assault. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of felonious assault as charged in count 6 of the indictment. Felony of the first degree. Count 6, interrogatory, felonious assault. We, the jury, do find the victim, Victor Ortiz, was a peace officer. Count 6, specification 1. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 1 attached to count 6. Count 6, specification 2. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 2 attached to count 6. Verdict, count 7, attempted murder, felony of the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of attempted murder as charged in count 7 of the indictment. Count 7, specification 1. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 1 attached to count 7. Count 7, specification 2. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 2 attached to count 7. Verdict, count 8, felonious assault, felony of the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of felonious assault as charged in count 8 of the indictment. We, the jury, do find that the victim, Brian Behrens, was a peace officer. Count 8, specification 1. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 1 attached to count 8. Count 8, specification 2. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 2 attached to count 8. Verdict, count 9, attempted murder, felony of the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of attempted murder as charged in count 9 of the indictment. Count 9, specification 1. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 1 attached to count 9. Count 9, specification 2. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 2 attached to count 9. Verdict, count 10, felonious assault. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of felonious assault as charged in count 10 of the indictment, felony of the first degree. Count 10, interrogatory 1. We, the jury, do find the victim, Ed Golick, was a peace officer. Count 10, specification 1. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 1 attached to count 10. Count 10, specification 2. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 2 attached to count 2. Verdict, count 11, attempted murder, felony of the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of attempted murder as charged in count 11 of the indictment. We, the jury, find the defendant count 11, specification 1. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 1 attached to count 11. Count 11, specification 2. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 2 attached to count 11. Verdict, count 12, felonious assault, felony of the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of felonious assault as charged in count 12 of the indictment. Count 12, interrogatory. We, the jury, do find the victim, Mike Castanis, was a peace officer. Count 12, specification 1. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 1 attached to count 12. Count 12, specification 2. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 2 attached to count 12. Verdict, count 13, attempted murder, felony of the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of attempted murder as charged in count 13 in the indictment. Count 13, specification 1. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 1 attached to count 13. Excuse me. Count 13, specification 2. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 2 attached to count 13. Verdict form, count 14, felonious assault, felony of the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of felonious assault as charged in count 14 of the indictment. We, the jury, do find the victim, Sean Bailey, was a peace officer. Count 14, specification 1. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 1 attached to count 14. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 2 attached to count 14. Verdict, count 15, felonious assault, felony of the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson not guilty of felonious assault as charged in count 15 of the indictment. The jury correctly left interrogatory 1, specification 1, and specification 2 blank. Verdict, count 16, felonious assault, felony of the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson not guilty of felonious assault as charged in count 16 of the indictment. The jury properly left interrogatory 1, specification 1, and specification 2 left blank or unfulfilled relative to count 16. Verdict, count 17, felonious assault, felony of the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of felonious assault as charged in count 17 of the indictment. Count 17, interrogatory. We, the jury, do find that the victim, Gage Hume, was a peace officer. Count 17, specification 1. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 1 attached to count 17. We, the jury, count 17, specification 2. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of firearm specification 2 attached to count 17. Count 18, felonious assault, felony of the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson not guilty of felonious assault as charged in count 18 of the indictment. The jury properly left interrogatory 1, specification 1, and specification 2 blank. Verdict, count 19, attempted murder, felony of the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson not guilty of attempted murder as charged in count 19 of the indictment. The jury properly left specification 1 blank. Verdict, count 20, felonious assault, felony of the second degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson not guilty of felonious assault as charged in count 20 of the indictment. The jury properly left specification 1 blank. Count 21, inducing panic, misdemeanor of the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Martin Robinson guilty of inducing panic as charged in count 21 of the indictment. Members of the jury, I've read your verdicts out loud in open court, and I'm going to now ask you if these are in fact your verdicts as I've read them, and I'm going to start in the same manner I did before with the foreperson. Madam foreperson, juror number 1, are these your verdicts?
Yes, they are.
Juror number 2?
Yes, they are.
Juror number 3?
Yes, they are.
Juror number 4?
Yes, they are.
Juror number 5?
Yes, they are.
Juror number 6?
Yes, they are.
Juror number 7?
Yes.
Juror number 8?
Yes.
Juror number 9?
Yes, they are.
Juror number 10?
Yes, they are.
Juror number 11?
Yes.
And juror number 12?
Yes.
At this time, bond will be revoked from Mr. Robinson. He will be held without bond pending sentencing. It's my intention to sentence Mr. Robinson at 11 o'clock Monday morning, the 11th of March. Prosecutor Silva, Prosecutor DeZord, I believe that that date works for you as well as any victims of anybody that should be present or have a right to be present under Marcy's law or would like to be heard.
We'll make it happen.
Thank you. And Attorney Yoder, I understand that date and time works for you as well, and as far as anybody that you might wish to speak as well. Very well. Before I release this jury, is there anything that the state would like to put on the record or address?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Attorney,
Can I see the jury forms?
you want to see them right this second?
If I could.
You may.
Just briefly.
No problem. And I'll make copies of the jury forms for both parties, but you're free to look at them for a moment if you'd like. I appreciate that. I didn't look at every one of them. I fanned through them. So you did get the date right on some of them. I appreciate that. Thank you, counsel. I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. Anything further then?
No, thank you, Your Honor. I'm not sure of the court's policy on this, but it's always helpful for me if the jury would like to hang around afterwards and speak to counsel. I'd be more than happy to talk to them. If they want to leave, I understand as well.
It's generally not my policy to allow the lawyers to speak to jurors, but once they're released from the courthouse and once they're released from their admonition, it is certainly their right to speak to you if you wish, or to any of the lawyers, but I'm not going to have them stick around unless they choose to loiter or stick around in the lobby, but otherwise they'll be escorted out of here, and after that, it's their prerogative to speak to anybody, members of the media or the attorneys, as they wish.
I understand.
Anything further then?
No, Your Honor.
We'll be in adjournment until Monday morning at 11.
All rise.
Okay, everybody, I want to thank you very much for tuning in. We're going to have an update later on. There are just so many charges involved in all this. We want to make sure we have everything accurate. So reporter Scott Mahoney's been working on this story, and we'll have an update later on. And thank you all for tuning in. Have a great day.